Where's my cup that I always set my darn thing on? Ignore the mess. Just hold on. Aha, found it. Lovely, I need to clean this out. Oof. Get ready to be tortured with my horrible sketches. Hold on, let me pull up YouTube and then we can listen to spoopily stories. Yay. Nani? Nani? Kill me. Oh, what is going on? Oh. Ah, snap. YouTube Chrome ran out of memory while trying. What? Ow, snap. You done fucked up, bruh. Where? Oh, there's my mouse. I'm so stupid. Here we go. The King Spook Halloween special.
We're at Link. We wanted to show
Oh
you how
God,
we created
no,
our amazing
no,
website,
no.
Links. Now we know that having a great website
Absolutely, nobody cares.
Well, I trust you all know why I've brought you here. It's the big night, Halloween. And I don't know about you, but personally, I think that nothing sets the scene better than a horror story. And that's why I've gathered the 9 of you here tonight. I christen this the first annual meeting of the Creepypasta Society. So, who wants to go first? What's the matter? Shy?
Oof.
Alright, I'll choose. How about Andy?
They called me a jack of all trades, and I guess I was right. I was willing to do a lot of things for pay, and manual labour popped up a lot. So when old Miss Lathib asked me to help her move, I was glad to help. I got money, she didn't have to pay for an expensive moving crew. We all win, right? But the place she moved into was way out of town. I had to drive 3 miles off the beaten path of these woods to reach this place, then load all her crap in through this tiny log cabin's door. When I was finally done, it was dark and cold outside, so she made me chop firewood for her. I didn't complain at the time, since she was paying me after all, but in the process, I ended up with a few nasty splinters all over my hands. Glad to finally be done with that job, I went back to normal life, and my extra pocket money was gone within a couple of weeks. The splinters, however, were not. I tried plucking them out with tweezers, but the little bastards hung on. At first I thought nothing of it, but they started to look pretty bad after a while. I guess they got infected because they started oozing all types of liquids. I needed to have them in band-aids most of the time, just to avoid disgust. I finally caved in and went to a terminologist, and he recommended the usual. Neosporin, peroxide, washing my hands, stop picking at them, etc. But after a week of following those instructions, my fingers just looked worse. Not to mention hurt like a bitch. Instead of the idiot dermatologist, this time I went to a real doctor. The guy seemed interested and took some samples of the pus oozing from my skin. He told me he'd get back to me after a while, so I waited. Well, guess what?
He never got back to you.
Were now so swollen that I could barely do anything with them. hands means no work. So I had to live off what money I had left, cursing myself for ever working for Miss Lafitte, as if that weren't bad enough. They sell hearts. More than Splinter should. I had them wrapped up a lot, and I doubt I could even move them anymore. Finally, the doctor got back to me. We got around to meeting each other again, because he said he wanted to show me something in person. What he ended up handing me was a printout from some webpage about a rare parasite that I'd never heard of. The thing crawls under people's skin and starts eating away at their muscle tissue,
Ooh.
generally causing hell for its host. As soon as it gets big enough, it lays its eggs in the host's bloodstream so the little baby parasites can get all over the body. The worst thing about these bugs is that they're
Uncurable.
really tiny. So tiny, they could be mistaken for a splinter.
Oh.
Okay. I don't even know you can call the story before mine scary at all. But mine is way scarier. So, submitted for approval of the Creepypasta Society, I call this story The Seven Gates of Hell.
Ooh, I've heard this one. I think.
Some say on Halloween night, if you go past 7 black gates, you'll see the 7 gates of hell. I thought it was a myth at first until I tried it out. I went past 7 black gates around my neighborhood. Then when I went to sleep, my dreams were in a furious fire. And when it stopped, there was a man, tall and bulky, his eyes rather squinted to show he's old. His legs and hands were thin and looked like he could barely support his own weight. He spoke with a scratchy and dying tone. He said,
Welcome to the 7 gates of hell.
Oh.
He chuckled and opened the gate. My whole body became numb. Moving on its own, I could not fight it. Struggling didn't work. I gave up trying to fight it and stopped struggling. And without control of my body, I went past the first gate. In the first gate, I saw fire showing the corpses that were horribly mutated, desecrated, and burned. They were sobbing so loudly that I couldn't hear the crackles of the fire. One came up to me, with one eye and bullet holes all over him. He said, "We are the desecrated corpses who did not get a proper burial. We're to stay here till the judgment day." I went past him into the second gate. It was in a building. Through the second gate, I found myself in a dungeon. I saw people tied up, screaming in pain. One was being sawed in half very slowly. His body kept healing, ready to be sawed in half again. One was in the Iron Maiden with the door being closed and opened, and the body looked as normal as ever. A man in an executioner's mask said to me,
We are the torturer being tortured by our own devices.
I went past him to the exit and walked to the third gate. As I passed through the third gate, I found myself in a forest. But here, it was completely silent except for a few yells. There was a man hanging on a noose. Another fell off a cliff, reappeared, and fell off again. I was running. Away from what I saw was a horribly burned woman chasing after me. I already knew what this one was. These were the people who committed suicide. I ran into the fourth gate. It was in a palace. I saw emperors, politicians, and people who looked as if they possessed a lot of wealth. An emperor was being gnawed on by lions. When the lions ripped out a limb or slashed him, the part grew back. A politician was getting beat up by what looked like shadows in prisoners' clothes. A man in a suit came up to me and said, "We are the corrupted people. The people who used our power to help ourselves, and not the people." I walked to the next gate, the fifth, and as I passed through it, I found myself in another room. I saw a man tied up on a bed, lashed by floating spiky leather whips. A woman was being burned by a lighter, but her screams and cries were muffled by a cloth that was used as a gag. A rather large man came up to me and said, "We are the rapists and the sex offenders, paying for our crimes on Earth." I ran to the 6th gate. As I passed through gate 6, I found myself in yet another room.
Oh my gosh.
I saw a man and woman being stabbed, their wounds healing almost immediately. Another person was being buried alive, and another being hit and jabbed with a floating metal bar. I knew who these were. These
The murderers.
were the people who were murderers, being harmed the way they killed their victims. The exit was the 7th gate, the final one. The nightmare is almost over. It's almost over, I said to myself. As I passed through gate 7, I found myself outside. There's another man wearing a shroud over his head coated with explosives. He blew up, regenerated,
Suicide
and blew
bomber.
up again. Another one was being beaten, stabbed by sharp metal objects, and burned by torches, lighters, and matches. They were held by people who looked like shadows. One of them came to me and said, "They are the mass murderers, the terrorists, and suicide bombers.
Mm-hmm.
I am a shadow of one of his victims."
I'm sorry.
I ran to the exit. When I woke up in the morning, I was horribly scared. The images of what I saw ran through my head. In fact, that was all I was thinking for the whole year. It became Halloween again. I didn't dare to go outside at night. I just went to bed. It took me a while to fall asleep, and when I did, I was in front of the first gate of hell again. There was a teenager just like me, staring at me, shocked to see me. My body then went numb. I could not control myself anymore. I said to him, "Welcome to the 7 gates of hell." I chuckled and opened the gate for him. After he went inside with an expression that looked like he was fighting something and struggling, I looked at myself on a goblet filled with what looked like blood. I saw the gatekeeper. I became the gatekeeper. I am the gatekeeper.
Heroin?
You want to create a stunning website? I've already done
No.
it. With Wix. Let me show you how it's done.
No thanks. Go pass.
Gatekeeper.
Alright, I'm next. Submitted for the approval of the Creepypasta Society. I call this
Creepypasta.
story Pale Luna. In the last decade and a half, it's become infinitely easier to obtain exactly what you're looking for, by way of only a couple of keystrokes. The internet has made it all too simple to use a computer to change reality. An abundance of information is merely a search engine away, to the point of where it's hard to imagine life as any different. Yet, a generation ago, when the words streaming and torrent were meaningless save for the conventions about water, people met face-to-face to conduct software swap parties, trade games, and applications on Sharpie-labeled 5 1/4-inch floppies. Of course, most of the time the meets were a way for frugal, community-minded individuals to trade popular games like King's Quest and Maniac Mansion amongst themselves. However, a few early programming talents designed their own computer games to share amongst their circles of acquaintances, who in turn would pass it on until, if fun and well-designed enough, an independently developed game had its place in the collection of aficionados across the country. Think of it as the 80s equivalent of a viral video. Pale Luna, on the other hand, was never circulated outside the San Francisco Bay Area. All known copies have been disposed of. All computers that have ever run the game now detritus, buried underneath layers of filth and polystyrene. This fact is attributed to the number of rather abstruse design choices made by its programmer. Pale Luna was a text adventure in the vein of Zork and the Lurking Horror, at a time when said genre was swiftly going out of fashion. Upon booting the program, the player was presented with the screen almost completely blank except for the text, "You're in a dark room. moonlight shines through the window. There is gold in the corner, along with a shovel and a rope. There is a door to the east. Command? So began the game for that one writer for a long-out-of-print fanzine described as enigmatic, nonsensical, and completely unplayable, as the only commands that the game would accept were pick up gold, pick up shovel, pick up rope, open door, and go east. The player was soon presented with the following. Read your reward. Pale Luna smiles at you. You're in a forest. There are paths to the north, west, and east. Command? What quickly infuriated the few who've played the game was the confusing and buggy nature of the second screen onward. Only one of the directional decisions would be the correct one. For example, on this occasion, a command to go in a direction other than north would lead to the system freezing, requiring the operator to hard reboot the entire computer. Further, any subsequent screens seem to merely repeat the above text, with the difference being only the directions available. Worse still, the standard text adventure commands appeared to be useless. The only accepted non-movement related prompts were use gold, which caused the game to display the message, not here, use shovel, which brought up not now, and use rope, which prompted the text, you've already used this. Most who played the game progressed a couple of screens into it before becoming fed up with the constant rebooting and tossing the disc in disgust, writing off the experience as a shoddy programmed farce. However, there's one thing about the world of computers that remains true, no matter the era. Some people who use them have way too much time on their hands. A young man by the name of Michael Nevins decided to see if there was more to Pale Luna than what met the eye. 5 hours and 33 screens worth of trial and error and unplugged computer cords later, he finally managed to make the game display different text. The text in this new area read, Pale Luna smiles wide. There are no paths. Pale Luna smiles wide. The ground is soft. Pale Luna smiles wide. Here. Command? It was another hour still before Nevin stumbled upon the proper combination of phrases to make the game progress any farther. Dig hole, drop gold, then fill hole. This caused the screen to display, Congratulations, 40, 24,248, negative 121, 4,434.
Oh my gosh, that's
the game ceased to accept commands
the
requiring users
coordinates
reboot
to
one last
gold
time.
that was
After
buried,
some deliberations,
obviously.
Nevins came to the conclusion that the numbers referred to the lines of latitude and longitude. The coordinates led to a point in the sprawling forest that dominated the nearby Layson Volcanic Park. As he possessed much more free time than sense, Nevins vowed to see Pale Luna through to its end. The next day, armed with a map, a compass, and a shovel, he navigated the park's trails, noting with amusement how each turn he made corresponded roughly to those he took in-game. Though he initially regretted bringing the cumbersome digging tool on a mere hunch, the path's similarity all but confirmed his suspicions that the journey would end up with him face-to-face with an eccentric's buried treasure. Out of breath after a tricky struggle with the coordinates, he was pleasantly surprised by a literal stumble upon a patch of uneven dirt. Shoveling as excitedly as he was, it would be an understatement to say that he was taken aback when his heavy strokes unearthed the badly decomposing head of a blonde-haired little girl. Nevins promptly reported the situation to the authorities. The girl was identified as Karen Paulson, 11. Reported as missing to the San Diego Police Department a year and a half prior. Efforts were made to track down the programmer of Pale Luna, but the nearly anonymous legal gray area in which the software swapping community operates inescapably led to many dead ends. Collectors have been known to offer upwards of 6 figures to an authentic copy of the game. The rest of Karen's body was never found.
Maybe if you played the rest of the game, you would find the rest.
Victors. I'm submitting this for the approval of the Creepypasta Society. I call this story The Dare.
Lovely.
It was a dare for the record books. Anyone who took it was labeled critically insane by their friends and would have to be carried away to the loony bin. But if anyone was insane that day, it was Thomas Schwartz, known as Tommy to his friends. He not only volunteered to do it, but he was going to do it alone. driveway of the Nevessarian house, he stood confident. His eyes shifted from window to door, seeking out weaknesses. If he was scared, he didn't show it. Ignoring the cheers of his accomplices, he advanced towards his opponent. The sounds of a lawnmower hitch arrived with the breeze, engulfing the children as they held their positions. The driveway found itself losing a war with the grass, and the boundary where they separated became unclear. Tommy didn't notice this. His mind was focused upon his goal and what lay ahead. Cicadas argued with each other, but all was lost on Thomas as the wood steps underneath his feet moaned with the effort from supporting him. With the doorbell non-functioning and no welcome mat to accommodate him, Tommy pried open the screen door, who also had some complaining to do, and reached for the brass knob. As his thumb began pushing down the lever, time held its breath in anticipation. His friends had long ceased their cheers and merely stood where it was safe, letting the sun extract sweat from their pores. Even the birds and the cicadas had paused in their conversation to study him. The door wailed as it allowed him entry, and again when the house had engulfed him. With the door in between his friends and him, the fear crept into his face. The path to being a schoolyard legend certainly isn't the easiest. Nothing had shambled into sight, clanking chains, though that didn't alleviate Thomas's fears. His goal resided on the second story, and the faster he made it there, the less likely he would end up being killed by horrors unknown. With every fiber of his being resisting him, Thomas advanced through the house. The echo of his footfall seemed to resonate throughout the entire house as they collided with the carpet which had cushioned the heads of the 3 families that lived there.
What the hell?
Upon passing the foyer, white-sheeted figures assaulted his vision, making him leap. However,
Weird.
the furniture did not attack, perhaps not hungry for small children. As his heart safely descended from his throat, Thomas had reinforced his nerves and began walking again. The stairs curved at a sharp turn near the middle. A small groan issued from Thomas as nightmare scenarios played out in his mind. The fact that this particular staircase was used as a bowling alley for severed heads didn't exactly appeal to him either. No ghost could compare to the taunts and teases of his fellow colleagues, however, so the staircase was only a minor nuisance. With each step, Thomas's muscles tightened further, trying in vain to prevent the inevitable. His eyes forced his head to turn around the corner, his bowels bracing for release. Nothing came at him. Nothing upon nothing erupted from the hallway. The nothing disemboweled him and gouged his eyes out with extraordinary non-existence. Ignoring the ball of snakes squirming in his bowels, Thomas approached the far door on the right, the final destination. Tommy couldn't decide whether or not the doors in the hallway being closed were a blessing or a curse. Shifting horrors may lurk in the folds of the unknown, but since they didn't attack, he didn't bother himself with spooking himself. The goal was too close in sight to chicken out. Thomas stretched his hand out to the knob of the final room, and as he did so, the knob shrank from it. Yet the door yielded to him as he entered the room. The accursed painting was on the far wall, as if expecting him, beckoning him closer into itself, as it had done to so many others. The painting didn't seem like one that would devour the sanity of so many innocents. In fact, it seemed rather innocent itself. No pentagrams or monsters of any kind. The moon's one winking eye felt playful to Thomas, and the row of neat houses made him yearn for his own. No spade-clawed hand bore into his flesh, no clanking chains found their way into his soul. Thomas even forgot what was supposed to frighten him about the house. As he turned to go, he stole one final look back at the painting and smiled. He was ready to rejoin his friends outside. Thomas Schwartz was never found. The children that had urged him to do it waited with all of the patience they could muster as the light deepened to orange over the horizon. Eventually, each found their own paths to their houses and mothers, while Thomas's began to worry. None of them talked about what had occurred, not between themselves and not to the police when they interrogated them. When the house was demolished a year later, there was no painting depicting a waking moon amongst the rubble.
That was good. But these stories are all really short. How about some longer ones?
Something longer, you say?
Oh, Jesus.
I think I've got what you're looking for.
Scared me.
Submitted for approval of the Creepypasta Society. I call the story I Dare You.
Hi. Do you want to learn how to draw amazing art? Would you like to learn how to draw straight out of your head and start wowing everyone around you?
Excuse me, but I think my art's pretty good.
From beginner to advanced. Drawing is the most sought after skill when it comes to any artistic job.
I think I'm doing pretty good.
The course begins with the basics. I'll take you through everything you need to know to start drawing like an expert.
I think I'm doing pretty good. So, no thank you.
I dare you. I promise you a happy ending. It started out innocent enough, a trio of 4th grade boys playing I Dare You. The dares, like they always do, began with little things. For example, chugging a water bottle. It easily progressed to physical tests such as run to that mailbox and back or climb that tree. There were also those nasty little boy dares, the majority eating the bugs and the like. The boys' names were Jacob, Adam, and Derek. Let me tell you a bit about them before we progress with the story. Jacob Hill was the only child of his family, one of the richest in the state. His parents were always too busy for him, and were almost never home. He used to have a golden retriever named Willie. The previous year, however, Willie got very sick and had to be put down. Jacob had to do the job himself. Adam Juarez rarely saw his parents, too. He was born in the U.S., but his parents were Mexican immigrants, and they as a family often faced racial discrimination. He was also poor. His father worked 2 jobs. And his mother, well, she managed to get some extra money here and there. Odd job, she said. In truth, she was a prostitute. And Adam knew. But his father never found out. His father was also a problem. Back in Mexico, he was involved with the drug cartel. On top of that, the only times he saw his father, the man was either drunk or asleep. Like Jacob, he never really knew his parents. Derek Green was an odd one. At times, he was an Einstein, and at others, he was downright stupid. He was adopted and was often bullied for having gay parents. One of his fathers was jailed for DUI and possession of meth. His other father was a severe alcoholic, and physically and sexually abusive. Derek lived by the woods, and he was a quiet boy, so nobody knew about the abuse. These boys all had it hard, but their hardships solidified their friendships between them. Now let's return to the story. Although Derek lived by the woods, he was absolutely terrified of him, as were the other boys. Finally, Jacob made one of the boldest of dares. He dared Derek to go into the forest for 10 minutes. Hesitantly, he did so. Patches of light shone through the interlocked web of branches and leaves formed by the trees, but for the most part, it was dark and moist.
And moist.
Derek encountered many types of fungi and plants, and he was jumpy at everything, from the sounds of his own footsteps to small squirrels. After what he thought was 10 minutes, he started to return. It only took him half a minute to realize he was lost. Being the quiet boy he was, his shouting voice would be a talking voice for most of us. His legs now tired, he sat down and rested. He was quickly off to sleep. It had now been at least 25 minutes, and Derek still hadn't returned. The forest scared the wits out of Adam and Jacob, but they decided one of them would have to go after him. They settled on rock, paper, scissors, best 2 out of 3. Jacob lost and had to go alone. Jacob hadn't ever been as near the woods as Derek had, making it that much more frightening for him. He hollered Derek's name again and again, but it was no use. You see, Derek was a heavy sleeper. You could blow a train whistle in his ear and he wouldn't so much as move. Jacob continued to wander through the forest, climbing over fallen trees and trotting through muddy ground. It was exhausting. It had been
Don't know how
2
to spell
hours since Jacob
signature.
had gone to look for Derek. Adam was bored and scared for his friends. After a brief moment of consideration, he went against his best judgment and entered the forest to go look for his friends. He searched around for maybe 20 minutes and couldn't find either of them. Derek woke to the feeling of liquid on his hands. As he opened his eyes, he noticed it had gotten darker. Not considerably so, but it was noticeable. He looked down and saw water. A few drops. It was starting to sprinkle. Derek dried off his hands on his hoodie and stood up. He dusted the soil off the backside of his pants and looked up, immediately making eye contact with
And
a
that's
wolf.
it. Peace.
Wolf